Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we're going to explore astrology as an intuitive approach, and we'll look at the practical applications of astrology as well. With me is Gina Ruk, who is a former professor of psychology at the University of Novi Sad in Serbia. A chapter on Gina's work in astrology has been included in the book The Gold Leaf Lady by her husband, Professor Stephen Braude. Welcome, Gina.
Hello, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to be invited.
Let's begin by talking about your work as a psychologist at the University of Novi Sad. You published, as I understand it, maybe 100 research papers.
Yeah, I like to do researches. That's why I worked at university. And by the end, I wrote a book. My favorite subject was paranoia. Mm-hmm. So I never let that subject go.
Well, it's a very interesting subject. And
yes. And it's very complex, very elusive, and
mm-hmm.
that's what attracted me. Not many people are there, so you have plenty of space to research, and I think that I did a good contribution
mm-hmm.
to that subject.
And so you were basically researching paranoia and I suppose some other mental disorders as well.
Mostly paranoia, and then I focused on a therapy as well. Mm-hmm. And I adopted by then a very specific approach to paranoia as a systemic mm-hmm. Phenomenon. So not something that is just an individual, but interactive phenomena, which depends on social environment and mm-hmm. reinforces itself and appears in social environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that while you're doing your research on paranoia in Serbia, a civil war erupted.
Yes.
And I imagine at that point, one might say paranoia became a social phenomenon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the whole society was affected, and we could define the whole society as a paranoid, yeah. Mm-hmm. Seeing enemy outside, hostility toward them, everything, and the defense mechanism went very far, going to the war. Mm-hmm. And it had consequences to everybody who was even not interested. I was one of them, mm-hmm. both with my job and with salary.
Well, let's talk about that, because your salary got reduced practically to nothing.
$2 a month, yes.
$2 a month. That's well below the poverty. It's unbelievably low.
Well, I spent it buying myself a bottle of champagne, mm-hmm. sharing with the friends, and at that point I realized that I have to do something. I did not want to live like that. I did not want to be a refugee or anything. And luckily I had a friend who was a sports physician to a handball team. They mm-hmm. were championships. So he told me, he lived excellent, like, find some sport, they still have money. And even if I did not like the idea to leave university, I liked to do all those researches. I started to look around what to do. Mm-hmm.
And astrology had been a hobby of yours.
Yes, very early. So by now it's about 35, 40 years. Also attracted me with its complexity and elusiveness. More you know, deeper you have to go to know something really and to give some results there, mm-hmm. even if it's a vast knowledge, for 1,000 years old knowledge perhaps, mm-hmm. 2,000 before Christ, 2,000 after Christ. And I like to do that to myself, to friends, to colleagues, and it was for me a very nice research opportunity again.
You were doing horoscopes for people?
It was my hobby. So,
mm-hmm.
First of all, I belong to this Swiss School of Astrology, mm-hmm. and we practice real research in astrology. So I never read many books, mm-hmm. but it is just do work, analytical studies, mm-hmm. learn from what you did. So for every subject which I wanted, I did few hundred horoscopes, so very quickly. And from there, you can derive some conclusions. So somehow I build up my own astrology with the help of knowledge from the experts, because my teacher, Jakob Borgster, he was actually collaborating with Carl Gustav Jung, so he was one of the most famous.
So when you talk about the Swiss school of astrology, it's Jungian based.
It is Jungian, it is psychological astrology, yes. So we are dealing with human behavior and trying to predict human behavior, yeah? That's actually a part of the human nature. We always like to know what's the future and how are we connected with the universe. So somehow I was caught in that universal research.
Well, as a researcher, it strikes me that the problem with astrology is there's so many variables. There are planets, there are the houses, there are the aspects between the planets, there's the transiting chart and the natal chart. So there's really, when you look at a horoscope, there must be well over 100 variables you could focus in on.
It could be much more, much more than 100. And that's actually plus, and that's in the same time minus. Because that's why it's astrology elusive. You easily, trying to study astrology, see that you have some results and you think you know something. And then all of a sudden, the results don't show. And then the skepticism appears like, okay, astrology can't really do anything. But the secret is to go further, to open new doors, to research further and further. And of course, I think to specialize. It's impossible to cover all the areas, you know. I was specialized in psychological astrology, so okay, just keep human behavior in eye. And since I was a psychologist, it helped me to just add. So today, I think it's for me the best tool of detecting human behavior, better than any official test which is available out there.
Well, I might mention parenthetically, because this is your story, but as you know, one of my mentors was an astrologer. Arthur M. Young, who was a philosopher and cosmologist and the inventor of the Bell helicopter, so also, you know, a person very advanced in the field of technology and science. And after inventing the helicopter, he went to see a Jungian therapist, and he also began studying astrology, and he felt that the readings he was getting from astrology were much more valuable than the Jungian therapy.
Yes. Yes. Although, as far as I know, he used astrology, Arthur Young, in a sense he needed, for technology. So he was looking at the forces, and the angles of the planets and such. I'm looking at more like archetypes, like the astrology is cosmic psychology, let's say. Well,
in Arthur's case, he wrote a book called The Geometry of Meaning, in which he began to look at angular relationships and how you could translate them into qualitative meanings.
And he was able to do that. So that's what I mean when I say that you have to go and specialize. Since he was with the technology background, he nicely used for his purposes astrology. So
another book on astrology that's influenced me, it's a little pamphlet, you probably haven't seen it, written by Theodore Roszak, who was a sociologist, very well-known sociologist, now deceased, who wrote a famous book called The Making of the Counterculture, but he also did a little pamphlet on why astrology endures. And he claimed that the reason is because astrology connects us with what he called the realm of mythos, something deeper. You know, you would think of them, I think, as Jungian archetypes.
Yes, archetype. Well, I think that astrology is connected with two important features of human nature. First is that we, from the beginning of civilization, want to connect ourselves with the universe in various ways, in various approaches, but always trying to feel some connection. One of them offers astrology. And the second is our interest in prediction. We always like to know something about the future and our future, and here we are again with astrology.
And you, in your career, began providing astrological information for the Serbian soccer team.
Yeah, it happened when my salary was so bad, and I really listened to my friend to find something. And I was in situation to meet then the best coach in the country, so they was with the championship team, and he was some troubles to remain champion. And luckily, he was completely open-minded, beautiful, intelligent person. And he was willing, okay, if you can help us, show me what you can do. So since I was psychologist, nobody had in mind I will do anything else. And for a while, they did not know. I would not even reveal that I'm actually doing astrological analysis of players and the games and anything. But after a while, they did not mind, and we kept it a little bit as a secret and such. But I was very happy to be there and somehow forever abandoned the clinical psychology, being delighted with the healthy behavior and instant results, and that was a very nice part.
And the kind of information, as I understand it, that you were providing might be almost moment by moment, minute by minute, what particular players should be doing, when they would be strong, when they would be weak.
Yeah, first I analyzed each player of our team and any opposite team, which we were playing. So I was able to analyze the behavior, and those information were very valuable for the coach, because, you know, with the questionnaire, player would not tell you, oh, I don't feel really good today to play. First they want to play, second they are boys, they want to feel strong. But if you really know that there is some trouble with them, you can then correct it, and not to insult them. So that I was able to provide to coach, not communicating with the players, but telling him who is particularly good for game, who has some troubles, for example, with aggression or anxiety, which is usually the main point. And something very interesting, what we don't know how to detect with any psychological instrument, who is lucky for that game, who is not, and what to do. Luck plays a role in our lives. We know that, and we don't know how to deal with that information. And after that, I was able also to follow the game from the first moment to the last moment through horoscope. So to describe the minutes, how they go. So you have some empty period, 10 minutes, nothing important is happening. Then you have the opposite team, for example, scoring. So be careful between this and this minutes and such. So I would and I was able to tell the coach which of the particular players would come to score, or from his team who has the best chances to score. Of course, it doesn't mean in that sense that it was like sealed in stone, but it was a very nice tool for him to use the players, and did for him, seems to me, a nice difference, because he liked me around, and I stayed there for years.
He hired you for a long time.
I worked at university, so it was my actually undercover job,
Yes.
But one from which actually I had money, I had pleasure, and I enjoyed working that, and that was very nice.
And I understand that you were so successful that at some point the Serbian mafia learned of your work and also requested your services.
I got somehow in connection with them, so they like to have some prediction for the gambling. And they used it very well. So obviously, if you know how to gamble, those informations are very valuable to you. Which times, how the time goes, when is the best time, and you know how it varies, where are the best moments, where are the worst moments, and such. But I think you have to know to gamble, because we live in Vegas, and I can use very badly, not so well, let's say, those information for myself, because I don't know how to gamble.
Oh. Well, clearly you've had many successes in your astrological work. And the question that's on my mind, and I imagine many viewers are wondering at this point, were your successes due to astrology per se, or might they have been the result of your own intuitive, perhaps clairvoyant talents?
Well, I think like everywhere, for the big success, you need a lot of variables. Yeah, it just doesn't come with one line. When it comes to astrology, I think that one thing which I distinguish myself from almost everybody, I think there are perhaps 20 of us in the world who can actually precisely do the astrological chart. So to check the time of the birth from a person, but really with some nice mathematical approach. And I don't know why it is not more famous in the world. It's from Heinrich Kündig, from Swiss school, and Swiss who are famous for precision in all areas. They gave us this opportunity in their theory about how to calculate the real. So I'm not relying on a time of birth which somebody gives to me. But from that time and the events of life, I work back and I really do. So why is precision important? Because if you, for example, tell me you were born at 2 o'clock and I find out that you are at 2:30, those are two different people, yeah? Yes. Even if I have a knowledge in astrology, I'm talking to somebody else, not to you. And that's, I think, the first mistake why astrology today can't go further. I think it will either die or be just in newspapers or go further if we start to pay attention to precision. The other things I don't know how to answer. I think that I'm fanatical about this calculating and precision and such. Now, how much I add and about intuition, and so perhaps somebody else can answer.
You don't consider it your business to try and sort out all the many theoretical questions a lot of people would have about how can astrology possibly work?
It can work if you go deep enough, if you continue to study. Because it's easy to acquire this first knowledge. But with that, really, you can't do anything. You just can't make the conclusion astrology doesn't work. But if you're persistent, go further with study. There is so much knowledge out there, yeah, from these thousands of years. And apply it and just do research and pay attention to precision, to really, if you do for somebody horoscope, to have the horoscope of that person. In 95% of the time, what is written in a birth certificate is not accurate. And also the memory of your mom is usually not so accurate as we would like to think.
So if you're working from a birth certificate or from a mother's memory and that's not accurate, how do you know?
First, I learned, I checked in millions of horoscopes that this Heinrich Kündigen approach works. So if I find the really right time of the birth, I had times with some people 10 years to check if I now make right predictions, and I do. So obviously, if I really find the time, then you can apply that knowledge. Otherwise, you can't. So
well, let me ask you a different question now. Since you mentioned that your approach is Jungian.
Yes.
And Carl Jung wrote a very interesting preface to an edition, a translation of the Chinese I Ching, a book of Chinese divination, also used for forecasting the future and giving people advice. And in his introduction to Wilhelm's translation, he brought up his theory of synchronicity, basically saying that the reason that any methods of divination, including astrology, I assume, work, is by this principle of some sort of intelligence embedded in the universe itself.
Yes. That was his final conclusion. First, he went with the assumption that astrology is archetype, so put it up there in the sky. But later he corrected himself and said it's not causality. Right. So if I predict something, it's not causality in synchronicity. Yes. With that, I can agree. Even we are not very clear about Jung's term of synchronicity even today. Yeah. Even if he's clear, it's not clear.
And I know that your husband, Stephen Braude, has written some very cogent criticisms of the very idea of a non-causal connecting principle.
Yes.
But
It's a very difficult subject also because Jung also did not have himself time to go further with that and to research and develop. It left somehow hanging. But the thing is that I would agree in a way he defined synchronicity, that perhaps how astrology works. If we find some events in the future of the person, I can't almost never tell it is causality. It can be at least synchronicity. That if you behave this and this can come together with that event.
Because I'm sure many of the critics of astrology would say, well, there's no way that the movements of the planet Jupiter or Saturn is going to affect what a soccer player is doing.
It's a very, very shallow critique.
Yeah.
But the answer is still not found, and must be that it's very deep. I do believe that we are connected with the universe and it affects us. As the moon, affects the waves of the sea. Could be that Saturn really affects us somehow. I don't know yet how. We don't have so developed some approach to detect a radiation on us personally, the Saturn. But what I see is that, especially in first 2000 years of civilization, the most intelligent people were working in astrology. So they gave us tremendous knowledge. I respect that knowledge. Ever since, even today, many people give serious contribution. So studying all that knowledge I can use without knowing exactly what is it, because we have so many phenomena which we don't know yet what it is, but we are dealing with them. Electricity, we don't know exactly what is it, we are all using it. We don't know what is life. Do we know the definition of life? We don't.
And consciousness itself.
Yes, but yet we are discussing life and consciousness. So, I don't feel bad that I have the final answer, but the question is very shallow. So.
Okay. Well, as I recall, the coach that you worked with of the Serbian team was so successful, he was invited to coach the Chinese soccer team.
Yes, and after that he worked there for years, and first 2 years before I came to US, I was still with him, and he was all-time champion. Now, of course, it's about him, it's about players and such, but I like to think that my contribution was something what they can use. So otherwise I would not be around.
And how did things go working with the mafia?
That was very intense. Because they like those informations. Well, they appreciated it. So I also in some way lived very well. I did not want anything in return for them. But since it was a civil war, I must admit that the protection which I had was for me pretty precious. And at that time, they were not such a bad guys in the whole chaos of the situation.
Yeah, when you consider what else was going on at the time.
I was grateful to have that umbrella around me, and I did feel that they're around me. So.
Well, you've lived through some very turbulent times.
Yes. It was more than a decade. I did not feel it particularly because I lived on a north part of the country, and once I got involved with soccer and worked at university and my friends from mafia, I was so nicely isolated from those traumas in some way that I today don't have any bad memories from those time and consequences.
I have the impression that in very turbulent times, people turn to things like astrology more than in times of great peace and prosperity. Is that your experience?
I don't know how to answer because I was so strongly then pushed, and pulled. So I had so much to do in soccer. I had to do sometimes 200 horoscopes a day.
My goodness.
So I did not have time to reflect and to see what are the needs around. I like to do that. I wanted to do that, and I was ready to
well, but
work.
if you had been able to maintain your normal salary as a professor of psychology, you might never have.
Exactly. So I'm grateful to have that experience because that was very nice. And even today I use it for my fun here in Las Vegas, the capital of sports gambling. And I'm learning to play with that and have fun.
So it's at this point a hobby for you?
At this point it's a hobby, yes. As a way, I always looked at that as a hobby because especially now when I'm here and I live well, I would do horoscopes for friends and everybody. I would never charge. I think it's something else. But I like to teach people about this approach and precision and be careful about the approach.
Do you consider astrology to be a spiritual path?
For sure it is. For sure it has, because you need to have a knowledge from many disciplines, including spiritualism, philosophy. You have to add lots of things to go
and
there.
I thought the fact that you don't like to charge for it suggests that you consider it maybe a spiritual gift.
It's hard to answer to that question again because, as I said, I always had my jobs and this was a hobby. So for me, I think forever it will be the hobby, but it will be because I want to learn further and I want to help people if I can. And in many cases, I was able. So I like it a lot. And it's still a lot to learn. I did not get to the bottom of many questions which I would like to answer and to be better in assessment and prediction.
Well, I've been fascinated by astrology most of my life. I have to say I don't really accept the theories that are offered of astrology. I don't know why it should work, but in my own case, sometimes I know that it does work with great precision, and I'm sort of delighted and mystified by that at the same time.
I also don't accept most of the theories. So if it's not this school of Switzerland, which I really appreciate, and not much pressure when it comes to the theories, I also don't like them. I'm trying to build slowly my own theory and to work with that and to isolate myself and just to focus on research.
Well, Gina Ruk, thank you so much for being with me. This has been a delight.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And thank you for being with us.